So I'm down here today because it's too hot up there. Just a FYI. It's not because I'm abandoning the pulpit up there, but our scripture today is found in 1 Samuel. We're going to be talking about 1 Samuel chapter 5 and 6. It all kind of has one central theme, one central idea. But if you remember a couple weeks ago, in the end of 1 Samuel 3, beginning of 1 Samuel 4, and the end of 3, Samuel was becoming really the prophet that he is, and people are starting to wonder about him and recognizing that this is a boy who speaks the word of God. And then in chapter 4, we had that little bit of a war where the Israelites were fighting the Philistines because they didn't like the punishment that they were having, because God kind of let the Philistines have some rain there because the Israelites had turned from him. And so when they were fighting the Philistines, they lost, and so they went away, and they grabbed the Ark of the Covenant because they said, surely if we bring the Ark with us, it will win the battle for us. Again, we noted that they weren't trusting God, they were trusting the Ark, right? And so they take the Ark into the battle, and God looks at them and says, what are you doing? And they get defeated again. And what happened with the Ark was it was taken by the Philistines. If you understand some things, that means that the Philistines had to have taken some of the Levite priests with them as well, because you can't touch the Ark unless you're a Levite. And so the Ark is now taken to the Philistines' land, and that is where chapter 5 kind of picks up. What we kind of skimmed over was the death of Eli, who died because his sons were dead, and when he heard the news, he just kind of fell over dead. And kind of Ichabod, which was last week. But here we are in chapter 5. I'm going to read for us like the first 12 verses. Actually, that's the whole chapter. So, then the Philistines took the ark of God and brought it from Ebenezer to Ashdod. When the Philistines took the ark of God, they brought it into the house of Dagon and set it by Dagon. And when the people of Ashdod arose early in the morning, there was Dagon, fallen on its face to the earth before the ark of the Lord. So they took Dagon and set it in its place again. And when they arose early the next morning, there was Dagon fallen on its face to the ground before the ark of the Lord. The head of Dagon and both the palms of its hands were broken off on the threshold. Only Dagon's torso was left to it. Therefore, neither the priest of Dagon nor any who come into Dagon's house tread on the threshold of Dagon in Ashdod to this day. But the hand of the Lord was heavy on the people of Ashdod, and he ravaged them and struck them with tumors, both Ashdod and its territory. And when the men of Ashdod saw how it was, they said, the ark of the God of Israel must not remain with us, for his hand is harsh towards us, and Dagon our God. Therefore they sent and gathered to themselves all the lords of the Philistines, and said, what shall we do with the ark of the God of Israel? And they answered, let the ark of the God of Israel be carried away to Gath. So they carried the ark to the God of Israel away. So it was after they had carried it away that the hand of the Lord was against the city with a very great destruction. And he struck the men of the city, both small and great, and tumors broke out on them. Therefore they sent the ark of God of Ekron. So as the ark of God came to Ekron, that the Ekronites cried out, saying, they have brought the ark of the God of Israel to us to kill us and our people. So they sent and gathered together all the lords of the Philistines and said, send away the ark of the God of Israel and let it go back to its own place so that it does not kill us and our people. For there was a deadly destruction throughout all the cities. The hand of God was very heavy there. And the men who died or did not die were stricken with the tumors, and the cry of the city went up to heaven. Okay. So, you'll note in the bulletin, the title of the sermon is Casual Christianity. And really, kind of when I look at this, they are treating the Ark of the Covenant, they are treating the things of God casually. Right? It's the spoils of war in their mind, something they have the right to do with as they please. In chapter 6, which we'll talk about some, But in chapter 6, what ends up happening is they offer offerings and sacrifices as they take the Ark of the Covenant away and return it to Israel and say, hey, it's your problem, not ours. Right? And we'll get to that in a little bit. So the first thing I want us to see is that, A, we shouldn't treat the things of God casually. Right? We shouldn't be light about the things of God, and we can't. Right? They took the Ark of the Covenant and they put it in the house of Dagon. Dagon was their idol. It was their god. And the issue is that it was common practice to, when you conquered a land, you could take the gods of that land and they would kind of be worshipped along with your god as a lesser deity. Rome was very big on that. In fact, Rome would take all the religions and kind of meld it into one and be like, we're all the same, sort of a thing. We hear that a lot today, don't we? All religions are the same. They're not. Right? They're not. And so what we see happens is when the Ark of the Covenant goes into Dagon, the idol that they made out of wood falls over on its face, and they set it up because, well, we can't have that. That's not good. That's not appropriate. I mean, it'd be like the cross falling over, and we just pick it up and set it up again, right? Of course, if the cross falls over, it's probably because the kids were playing in here, and they bumped it, and I didn't do it, because that's how kids do it. I'm not responsible. You push me. You pick it up. No, I'm not. Oh, right. But in this case, that's not what happens. The Ark of the Covenant is in there, and they have it underneath Dagon. They have it as a lesser deity. Right? It's in there. They've given it a place in the house, but it doesn't have the preeminence. And so God destroys the idol. Idol worshiping is bad, and we can recognize that. And we go, oh yeah, well, we're not going to bow down to a statue and worship a statue. Right? Psalm 115, 3-8. Our God is in heaven. He does whatever he pleases. Their idols are silver and gold, the work of men's hands. They have mouths, but they do not speak. Eyes they have, but they do not see. They have ears, but they do not hear. Noses they have, but they do not smell. They have hands, but they do not handle. Feet they have, but they do not walk. Nor do they mutter through their throats. Those who make them are like them. So is everyone who trusts in them. Right? This is the description of idols. Right? The descriptions of idols, they're just man-made things. Man-made constructs. Really, idolatry is when we lift anything above God. I've been in a lot of churches where America itself, as we're celebrating the 250th anniversary of our nation, America is the idol. Right? We worship American culture, and we worship American ideals, and America is not God. Right? If America fell today, God would still be in charge. This has been a question that goes in our household a couple of times. Dad, what would happen if somebody came in and tried to take over America? And I laughed because I said, well, you know, if they tried, we all have guns. So and they go, we don't have guns. I said, no, but Buster across the street said he has some, and if we need to, just come on over. That's the spirit of America, right? So once we get past that ridiculousness of it's not probable to really conquer America, well, what would you do? I said, we would do what we always do. What's that? Well, we would pray, we would study, and we would worship God. That's what we would do. We would still spread the good news. We would still share the truth about Jesus. Well, what if it's illegal? Well, I'd like to believe if it's illegal, I'm still going to do it. Right? Because that's what we're supposed to do. That's what we're called to do. Because America is not my God. If America falls, God is still in charge. God is still in control. And so I'm going to continue to worship him the way he has called me to worship him. Right? But we have other idols. Other idols that we don't even think about as idols. Things we place above God. For some people, it's their children. Right? My children are more important to me than anything. Well, God should be first. Right? Or my spouse, I love my spouse more than anything. Well, God should be first. And some people, when they hear me say that, they go, Sarah must really feel hurt if she knows that she's second in your life. I said, no, because she knows God should be first, because God's first in her life too, right? God should be first. That's the idea here. God doesn't take second fiddle. He doesn't accept it as a position. And so what happens when you try to put God in second place, or third, or fourth, or fifth, or sixth, is God will address it. Right? And first thing we see him addressing here, it is their ideal. Their idea. He takes out the belief system and says, well, if you're going to worship this idol, then knocks it over. Kind of like a cat. Knocks it right over. Right? Not going to accept that. The reality is that God addresses our ideas first. When we start putting something else above him, as believers, we get that sense that maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Maybe God's telling me something, and we feel it, we sense it, we know, hey, I'm not doing this right. Book of Romans 1. Although they knew God, they did not glorify him as God, nor were thankful, but became futile in their thoughts, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Professing to be wise, they became fools and changed the glory of the incorruptible God into an image made like corruptible man, and birds and four-footed animals and creeping things. And if I were to put the rest of that in there, it would say, and then God gave them over to their desires, right? He said, look, if you're not going to listen to me, you know what's right, you know what's good, and if you're not going to do this, here. Do what you want then, right? I think of when my children do things that are stupid, right? I love my children, but they are my children, so they're going to do stupid things, right? The first thing I do is I say to them, that's stupid. Don't do that. And then I explain why we don't do that, right? Going to pick on Daniel a little bit right now. Sorry, Daniel. The other day we were at a campsite, Christian Lake up in, is that Stratford? Stratford, right? We were up there, and Hannah is swinging away, and she's swinging away, and she's having a great time, and there's this little girl next to her with her little, even younger sister, who's not paying any attention to what's happening in the swing next to her. And so she's stepping in front of Hannah, and Hannah doesn't know because Hannah's got her back to the girl because she's swinging up. And then the girl manages to step out of the way just in the nick of time, not knowing what's going on. And Sarah and I are sitting there watching going, she's going to kill that little girl. That little girl's going to die. And so we said, Daniel, go stop your sister. And so Daniel walks over and goes, whack! Right into his sister's back. You stupid, right? We then had a conversation, and I was not calm about it, so I needed to be corrected too. But you can't stop somebody on a swing just by smacking into their back like that, right? And so we talked about it. I said, you got to. I was planning on pulling it in. I said, your feet were planted. You can't just plant your feet. You got to move with them, right? We explained it to him, right? The first thing I did wasn't, why, you little boy, whack, whack, right? That's not the first thing. That's not the first way you approach things. It's not the first way God approaches us, right? He addresses the wrong beliefs. He brings things up. And it may be that you're scrolling on your phone and that little meme of Jesus is watching you pops up, or Jesus loves you, right? Or you're sitting there and you're just watching TV and that commercial comes on, right? You're sitting there with your family and some question comes up. You realize, oh yeah, he's first, not you guys. Right? This isn't to say that we don't love our family. We love our family. And so the first thing we see is he corrects the ideas. He corrects the way we're thinking. In fact, in Romans chapter 12, he tells us that we are transformed by the renewing of our mind, by changing the way we think, by habitually changing the way we think. The second thing we see as we go on is if we don't stop, if we continue on in our idolatry, in our wrong thinking, if we continue to treat God casually, where he doesn't get that first place, well, then it starts to manifest physically. Right? It manifests physically within our bodies. We get sick. We get lethargic. We get all those yucky feelings. And sometimes we go, I don't know why I'm sick. And sometimes it's because we've been pushing against God for so long. Of course we're sick. We can't handle that. Right? And here what we see is that, hey, after he destroyed the idol, they still hadn't caught on. And so the people of the city got sick. And they started getting tumors. And then I know that there are some people out there who would interpret this and go, well, that's because the Ark of the Covenant was probably putting out some radiation, and they were getting radiation poisoning and cancer from that sort of a stuff. Well, then why weren't the Israelites getting it? Right? Well, why was it okay for the Israelites? Because the Israelites, they didn't line the tabernacle with lead. Right? So if it was radiation, everybody who came in contact with the Ark should have been getting sick like this. But it wasn't. No. It was a people who had taken the Ark and they were treating it casually. The reality is that when we live in sin, when we live habitually in sin, and we don't allow God's voice to stop it, and we don't give in to submit to him, it will manifest into our physical bodies. And this isn't to say all sicknesses, right? Don't get me wrong. There are people out there who will tell you, well, that person's sick because they're sinning. Well, no, sometimes we're sick because we're in a fallen world and our bodies are not perfect, and so they break down naturally. Sometimes that is why we are sick. But we see in the book of Corinthians, Paul is talking about communion, and he says, look, you guys, you're taking it wrong. You're taking it selfishly. You're just not doing it right. And some of you are sick because of it. You're not saying sick in the head, right? Some of you are physically ill because you are not right in how you are approaching God. In the book of Hebrews chapter 13, it says, God chastises whom he loves. Right? That first step of chastisement is don't do that. Right? The second step is I told you not to do that, and now we've got to do something else. Right? In my household, it was often Mom would give us a spanking, and then Dad would hear about it, and we'd be sent to our room for a week. I preferred the spanking because it was done. Right? Hit me, I'm good. Right? Being sent for the room for a week, well, then I'm stuck in my room. Got nothing to do. Right? We'll read a book. Well, I didn't like reading when I was a kid. So that was punishment in itself. God chastises whom he loves. When we treat the things of the Lord casually, we get that illness. We get sick. And some of us might be sick because of that, right? We need to make sure that we are giving God that first place. But it goes beyond that, right? We get to verse 10, and they said, people are getting sick, so we're just going to send it off to another city. And the other city says, no, you're not. Right? Because they know the end result. Right? The final result of all of this, we keep passing on. We keep ignoring the fact that we are treating the things of God casually, that we aren't giving him first place. The final result of that is, you're sending the Ark of the Covenant here to kill us, they said. It's death, a physical death. Hebrews 10:31 says, of how much worse punishment do you suppose will he be thought worthy who has trampled the Son of God underfoot, counted the blood of the covenant by which he was sanctified a common thing, and insulted the Spirit of grace? For we know him who said, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. And again, the Lord will judge his people. It is a fearful thing to fall in the hands of the living God. I don't think Hebrews is talking about the loss of salvation here. I think it's just talking about, you know what? If you continue to push against God and you continue to treat his things casually and continue to forget to give him first place in your life, the preeminence, that no, the end result is death. Right? The end result is death. First he says, look, correct your mistake. And then he says, well, if you're not going to correct it, I'm going to have to give you some incentive and spanks us. Right? And the last thing he says is, look, if you're not going to do it, I have to kick you out. I've got to take you out of here. Right? Now, I've been using the parental illustration this whole time. As a parent, I'm not advocating for killing your children. Just got to put that out there, just because I know somewhere somebody's going to hear this and go, he's advocating we kill our kids. No, that's not what we're advocating, right? But there is a point where you take your kids out and you say, no, this is not acceptable, and you will not anymore. Right? There is a point, at some point, when kids get to be a certain age where you say, look, if you're going to keep behaving like that, you can't stay here. We love you, but you cannot treat us like this. You will not be welcomed back until you're ready to change. Right? And God says, look, if you're going to keep behaving like this, I'm going to have to take you out and I'm going to have to put an end to all of this. And we do it on sports teams. We do it. We even do it in the drama club. We've had to say it to a couple of kids. We've said, hey, what you're doing is not acceptable behavior. You need to stop. They continue. And then some repercussions happen. And then eventually, hey, what you're doing, you're not in the play anymore. Don't stay after. Don't come. Right? You never want to say that. God doesn't want to say it. That's not what he wants. He wants us to go, oh, you deserve the preeminence. You deserve the glory. Right? And so the reality is that we have options in how we want to deal with it. Right? The world has options. God gives us choices. First two really aren't great choices. And these are the two that we see here in 1 Samuel, right? One is that we just run away. Right? We run away. You know what? I'm gonna run, and that's what they're doing. They're passing the buck. Let's pass it, because we don't want it, and we're just gonna. The next is to just deny it. Well, no, I'm not sick. I'm not. These tumors, they're from something else. It's not because the ark's here. It's because Grandma's gravy is bad. I don't know, whatever. Right? And we see that in the world today. We see people who get as far away from God as they possibly can. We'll have nothing to do with the church. I'll have nothing to do with. And then you talk with them like a year later and they're into some other false religion. And when you talk about Christianity, like, I don't want to hear it, whatever, I don't want to hear it. Even if you're talking about the nice parts, the love and the goodness and I don't want to hear that. Well, you're all hypocrites, and we just, right? I don't think we're all hypocrites. Some of us go, no, I'm a sinner. I need grace just like you. Right? They run or they deny it. The third option is the one we should be choosing. Right? Submit to it. Submit to it. The Bible tells us, resist the devil and submit to the Lord. So oftentimes we get it backwards. We resist the Lord's chastisement and we submit to the devil. But the reality is when we submit to it, when we give him the glory, when we realize, God, we haven't given you first place in our life in this area. God, you haven't been our first thought when we wake up in the morning. God, you aren't the first thing we turn to when things go awry. God, you aren't the thing that makes me smile. We can either walk away from him, deny it, or submit to him. Say, God, I'm going to try better. I'm going to try to make you my everything. Because, Lord, you deserve that place. And that's the reality. That's the reality that the Philistines, they didn't get. Because they thought they had conquered him. Well, if they conquered him, why is he killing them? Right? The Israelites, they didn't get. They thought he was just a tool to use when they wanted to use him. So hopefully we do a little bit better and we recognize that, no, God, you are the creator of the universe, and you love me so much that you sent your son to die for me, that, Lord, I want to submit to you. I want to follow you, and I want you to be the first in my life. Will you bow with me in prayer?